Okay.
Okay, we're beginning here on Yevamos, Gimel Mebei, 6 lines from the bottom. We're picking up from yesterday's Gemara where we had a drosha Oleha teaching us that there is no mitzvah of Yibum on any of the 15 Arayos of the Mishnah, as well as any of their kareis. So the Gemara here, 6 lines from the bottom, Taima, the Kazarachman Allah. You see this only because it says this drosha of Allah. Not for Allah, you would think that this ervah, the sister of one's wife, and all the other Arayos would do Yibum. My time. Why would I say that? I'm reading aseh. Say this is a rule. You have an aseh, you have a conflicting los aseh. So aseh is docheh. You would think do Yibum even when it will cause a transgression of a los aseh. The problem is this rule of aseh being docheh is only where the los aseh stands by itself. But los aseh sheish kareis mi docheh. Do we have any source? We don't have any source. We're thinking of an aseh that when in conflict with the los aseh will be docheh, even if the los aseh comes with kareis. And we'll get back to this question much later. And before we do that, we'll move off to the general question. V'su los aseh greater min al docheh. Where's the source to begin with that an aseh is even docheh regular los aseh? And here we're going to have a number of laws just discussing that. Then we'll get back to the first question. So as far as this question, says the Gemara Dalan Manalf on the top Tachsiv, the pasuk says lo sul b'sha'atnez gedilim tasalach. It's pasuk in Sefer Dvarim. Do not wear sha'atnez. And then the pasuk, what does the next pasuk say right away? Gedilim tasalach. Make these strings for tzitzis. So what do you see? There's a Semichus. There's a connection between one and the next. One leads right into the next. We learn now that if the only way to make your tzitzis is with klein, then gedilim taslach, make the aseh, do the aseh, put on the tzitzis, even in conflict with the losul b'shanis. We don't go with the lav. As Rav Elazar explains, Semuchin minat Torah. How do you know that we make a drosha of Semuchin? Because really what we're doing here doesn't say anywhere clearly losul b'shanis and then there's an exception. It's based on the fact that the pasuk losul b'shanis is put right next to gedilim taslach. It's called Semichus. How do you know that you have such an idea of drasha of Semichus minat Torah? Shenemar, there's a pasuk in Nach, Smuchim la'ad la'olam l'suyim be'emes v'yashar. So we see this idea, Smuchim, when there's two things which are right next to each other, la'ad la'olam, it's forever. We deal with it as a reality. Asuyim be'emes v'yashar, it's true, it's straight, meaning something which we darshan. Yamar Rav Sheshes Amar Rav Elazar. Here's an example of a Semichus. Rav Sheshes said, "Rav Elazar Mishum Rav Elazar Menazari." Behind, how do we know Yevamos shnafel v'nei mukashchin if you have a Yevama, a sister-in-law, she's falling to Yibum before a brother-in-law who is mukashchin. He has some type of sickness, and it's not really fit for her. Right? She really doesn't want to marry him. How do we know that we don't literally muzzle her? We don't force her to get married, even though the rule, we'll see later, a man is able to force a Yevama. If he does Yibum Bal Karucha, it works. But how do we know that we really do our best to stop that Yibum? We don't force her into it. Shenemar, it's a Semichus. The pasuk says, Lo sachna shor b'disho, you can't muzzle your shore. V'samichle, what's right after? Kish v'ach miachtav, the whole mitzvah of Yibum. So we make a drasha, kish v'ach miachtav, but lo sachna, don't muzzle her. Meaning if she's really not interested, don't do it.
That's not a aseh docheh.
Right. This is not an example of aseh docheh. This is just an example to bring out the Semichus, the concept of Semichus, and then bringing it back to the top line. We use the Semichus there to bring out the whole source of aseh docheh. Gedilim next to put tzitzis on, even if there's klein.
Okay.
Perfect. The Gemara continues with taking the idea of Semichus just even further. V'amar Rav Yosef, he continues, afilu l'man do lo darash shmuchim b'alma. Even the opinion that usually when not hold to darshan smuchin, he doesn't hold him dealing with the fact that two psukim are next to each other, making a drasha from it. But Mishnah Torah Doresh. That's only in the first four svarim. But in Dvarim, Sefer Dvarim, he will darshan smuchin. What's the raya? Deha Rabbi Yehuda. Ba'alma Doresh, Mishnah Torah Doresh. The time of Rabbi Yehuda usually wouldn't darshan it. And Mishnah Torah you won't. But Ba'alma minal do darshan. So how do we know this? So usually, how do we know he doesn't darshan? In Tanya, the Oraysa says, I believe it's a mishpatim. It's definitely a sefer b'shmois. So it says, you have to kill her. She's chayv misa. She's this which. And then it says, Kol shochi behema mos yimos, he lives with an animal, there is also chiyuv misa. Samchu in yilot, the two psukim are put next to each other. The two ideas are right next to each other. Mas shochi behema b'skila. We know that one who lives with an animal is chayv skila. Rashi says, learned out of Ovi Yidoni on the side there. Bo yigmu osam demeim bam. It says beferish by Ovi Yidoni skila, and it says demeim by that pasuk. It also says demeim bam to get by the shochi memos. So we learn out demeim bam over there also is skila. So also af mechashefa b'skila. So the Tana here says benazai also the witch also gets skila. Amar le Rabbi Yehuda. We're just going to darshan a Semichus, and through the Semichus we're going to say that she is going to get skila. Ella, that's not enough. You can't just use Semichus to learn out skila. Ella ovidoni bichlal lechashven hayu, a different source why there's skila, because the ovidoni are different types of witchcraft, and they are included in mechashefa. Mechashefa is a general term for witchcraft. So they really would have been included in the word mechashefa l'sachayim, mechashven. So why does the Torah single them out when it speaks about the chiyuv yergamo osam, the chiyuv misa, the punishment, the other skila? Lahakish lahem v'lo it's supposed to be a melamed. It's supposed to be hekish compared to the mechashefa to teach you ma'uvi doni b'skila af mechashefa b'skila. It's another type of drasha that it's a yatsu min hachlal to teach me on the entire klal, the whole idea of kishuf, of witchcraft, that all types of witchcraft are going to get skila. Right, so that's his source. So you see that he's not willing to use smichus as a drasha. At least he'll learn out skila. Says the Gemara, over Moshe Torah minal the Doresh. So Rav Yossi said Rav Yehuda agrees in Sefer Devarim that he would darshan smichus. Where do you see that? It's not in the Mishnah later. No si adam anusas aviv umefutas aviv anusas benu umefutas benu. The Tanakama says that a man is allowed to get married to either his father or his son's anusar mafuta, a woman who he had a relationship with, but not through marriage. Rabbi Yehuda says, I agree when it comes to the one's son's relationship without marriage, but not with the father's. The father's anus, the father's mafuta is also. My time Rabbi Yehuda, I say, how does Rabbi Yehuda know this? So it's a pasuk in Sefer Devarim. Lo yikach ish as ishas aviv. So here the pasuk is repeating the ervah of one's father's wife. So it says he's not allowed to take his father's wife. But lo yigala knaf aviv. Then there's a strange expression. Also it says one cannot reveal knaf aviv. So what's knaf aviv? Knaf shara aviv lo yigala. The knaf that his father saw, he's not allowed to reveal. He can't take her. Can't have a relationship with her. So what is the knaf that his father saw? Some type of woman. The corner that he saw. So the answer is, it's a machlokas. Rabbi Yehuda is going to say it's referring to the anusa, the woman who the father didn't marry but had a relationship with. He forced her into the relationship. How does he know that? How do you know knaf? It's very vague. Who's the woman? It's the anusa. How does he know it's referring to anusa? Milvei dekara. It's a smichus. It's from earlier in those psukim. D'chsiv, it says before. V'nosana ish hashachiv ima lavi hanara chamishim kesef. So we just had the parsha discussing the halachos regarding anusa. Someone forced the girl into a relationship. The samichlei right after is likachish v'goymer.
And that's the smichus.
Right. That's how we learned that knaf is referring to the anusa of the father. The Rabbanon in the previous Mishnah argue, they say, no, the anusa of the father and the mafuta of the father are mutter, just like the son's anusa and mafuta. So how do they learn this pasuk of v'lo yigala knaf aviv? Well, first, actually, it seems like Gemara is trying to work out, why don't they agree to him? If it would actually be right next to each other, the two Parshiyos for good. But they're not exactly right next to each other. Now I'll read the parentheses whether it's in the Gemara or not. This is the meaning, because it says in the pasuk, Lo yikach ishas aviv bein time. It says, right, first you have the parsha Banusa, then it says these words, Lo yikach ishas aviv, and then the end of that pasuk is Lo yigala v'lo yigala knaf aviv. So the first few words is a break between the anusa and the v'lo yigala knaf aviv, therefore they're not willing to see a smichus. It needs to be literally back to back. So therefore, because it's not next to each other, they're not willing to say it. So what are they going to learn from V'lo Yigala Knaf Aviv? B'sheimeres Yavo Makos Medaver. Pasuk is talking about a woman who's waiting on Yibum with his father. Someone's father's brother passed away without children. So that, if he had a wife, right? So that wife would fall to Yibum to this person's father. So that's the Shemaris Yevamos of his father. So Pasuk.
So we just understand what's the question right now? The Rabbanan is saying Iha v'samach likita amrat. What are we saying? That if they were mamish samach, then the Rabbanan would agree to Rabbi Yehuda?
Yeah. I mean, everyone agrees you do darshan Semichus. Semichus, if you have two psukim literally back to back, then you would make some type of connection between them. In this case, it would be if Anusa would be right before V'lo Yigal Knaf Aviv, he would say, okay, it's a Giloy. It reveals to us that the words, the expression Knaf Aviv is referring to the woman that the father raped. But regarding this specific instance, we don't have it like that because it says Anusa, and then right after Anusa has Lo Yikach Ish as Eshes Aviv, which is referring to something else entirely. That's just it's referring to an ervah, his father's wife. And then afterwards, we now have the expression Knafav, V'lo Yigala Knafav, this lo says it. So they're not willing to connect the V'lo Yigala Knafav to the previous parsha of Anusa, with this lav in the middle. Good, makes sense? Fine. So what are they going to use it for? Shemaris Yavam. Shemaris Yavam is the father's. Shemaris Yavam is an expression referring to the woman waiting on Yibum. She's shomer. Sometimes shomer means to wait. Is it a parsha? It's next parsha by Veishav. Aviv Shemaris Adavar, to wait. Shemaris Yavam Katsuvidaber is referring to the father's Shemaris Yavam. Now, we have to explain V'lav or Lo B'shnei Lavim. You don't really need a pasuk to forbid her to the son of this father, because anyways, she's aseh. Why is she aseh? For two other reasons. First of all, it's a discussion later in the Sefta, but for either it's a losaseh or an aseh, may even be a losaseh, of a woman who is waiting on Yibum and she goes and has bia with someone else. So that's number one. Number two, which is V'lav is more specific here, is Dodosa. She's anyways his aunt. It's his father's brother's wife. But they say the Pasuk is coming to give an extra love. Now that we established the sources for Rabbi Yehuda's opinion that he doesn't have Semichus by the first four Svarim of the Torah, but in Sefer Dvarim he does, how do we understand that? When Mishnah Torah, my time to Doresh. Why does he darshan in Mishnah Torah? If he doesn't darshan, he doesn't darshan. There's got to be something about whenever he has Semichus in Mishnah Torah which tells him to darshan. So we have two explanations. Either you're going to say it's forced, there's no other way out, there's something forcing us to darshan it. Another option is there's something extra in the pasuk. And Gemara will explain right now, in this specific case, what it is, and if you're ever going to have another Semichus in Sefer Devarim, you're going to have to deal with these two opinions as well. Why is a muchach in that case? Why is a mufni? But in this specific case, the Gemara will explain right now. The first opinion that there's something forcing us into it, the imkein, because if you wouldn't darshan the Semichus the way that he wants to do it and say that it's referring to the Knaf Aviv, is referring to the Anusa, and instead say like the Rabbana that it's Elamai Shemaris Yavam, then Lichtevei Rachmana Gabi Arayos. Why don't we find this love appearing in Achremos by the rest of the list of the Arayos? It's basically adding on another ervah. Dodaso is taking his aunt, father's brother's wife. After his father's brother dies, she becomes a Shemaris Yavam of the father. It's another type of relationship between the father, and you could also bring in his aunt. So it's just adding another love. It should say it there, but it doesn't say in Achremos. Therefore, he doesn't want to introduce a new ervah in Sefer Dvarim. He rather say that it's not technically ervah, it's anusa of the father, she was never married, so you don't call it the same level of ervah. Another option is that there's something extra. If you say that the Knaf Aviv is Shemaris Yavam, and it's not to be explained to be referring to the Anusa, Anulav, Lichterachmana, Lo Yikach Ish as Eshes Aviv, and then there's two ways to read this. Either Lo Yigala Knaf Aviv Lamali, or the other way in Tosha is Lichter Lo Yikach Ish as Eshes Aviv Velo Yigala Knaf, Aviv Lamali. So it's either the full expression end is extra, or that's not extra necessarily, but the aviv is extra because we know we're talking about a father as in context of the pasuk. So why do I need the extra words or word? Shmamina, lafnui, there's something extra to teach me, even though typically I wouldn't darshan smichus, here I'm going to darshan it and apply it to anus. And we will continue Bez Hashem tomorrow.